Hmm. Oh, I've been tagged in a post. How delightful. I wonder what it is. I guess I'll check it out. Oh, that's right. Haha, I'm. Oh, I'm live, which means I can't edit that out. Not until later, that is. Oh my. Oh dear. Apparently I've broken a karaoke machine. Anyway, let me stop drithering on and move on. Welcome to Story Time. Today is April 18th. And goodness gracious, I just thought of something. I still haven't had pizza this month. I have pizza once a month this year, and I have not yet had it this month. So I must think about that. Quarantine it seems, would be the perfect time for pizza, and yet here I am. Regardless, I'm here. I'm here for story time. I'm here for you. And this is my first time going live. Not just going live in Facebook. I've gone live in Facebook before, but this is my first time going live specifically in a group. See, I created the Storytime group on Facebook so that those who are interested could join the group, and then I would go live inside the group, and it would let those of you who are a part of the group, with all hope, it would let all of you know. So we're trying this out, and we'll see how it works. We'll see if any of you notice. I am a little tardy. I was supposed to start at 10, but I was taking a nap, you see. So here I am. I've got a nice glass of something to sip on. First time using my 43 glass 43. It's a wonderful beverage. It's a vanilla citrus liqueur, quite sweet though. So I have a little bit of that, about a splash atop some Hennessy, and they do pair together quite well. Some of you might think it a sin for me to mix Hennessy with anything, but I decided to go for it. I wanted to try it, and it works. So fooey on Yui if you have anything to say otherwise. Anyway, looks like on YouTube I've got one person following, watching. On Facebook, I have no idea if I have anyone watching. It doesn't let me know that. So, if you are watching and you're ready for a good time, awesome, because we're going to get started anyway. Tonight, reading some Russian fairy tales out of a book I have here called Russian Fairy Tales. As you see, it's the Pantheon Fairy Tale and Folklore Library, collection by Alexander Afanasyev, translated by Norbert Guterman. And here it is, Russian Fairy Tales. If you were here last weekend and hello, Joy, glad to see you're here. Yes, that's another thing. If you say hello, I will give you a shout out. Keep that in mind. But if you were here last weekend for the Russian Fairy Tales, you know how bonkers these stories are. And I'm sure they're not going to get any better. There are probably a few that will enjoy, and there are some who will say, what the hell was the point of that? But otherwise, we're going to get through these. We'll read a few tonight, but we will also be reading a few original stories of my own. So, I was considering reading for you a story called Dark World, but it's unfinished as it is. So if you'd like, go ahead and comment in here if you'd like to read any of it. It's one of mine. It's sort of a noir style flick, but I've been writing it as a novelization, and it's got about 3 or 4 chapters so far, and each chapter is a different character and their part and their role in the entire story. And the story was written in a way that's sort of meant to emulate a little bit a combination of Sin City and Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie is a great director, and in most of his flicks, what happens is you'll have a number of character arcs that seem like they have nothing to do with each other, and then they all, in the end, come together in a very, very nice, tidy way. Well, not always tidy, but it always works. Anyway, so I will let you all decide which you would rather hear. If you would rather hear some of that or one of my other short stories. I also have a number of short stories at the ready here. So if you would like to hear one of my regular short stories, say that. If you'd like to hear that one, then you know what? Actually, we're reading Russian fairy tales. So instead of a vote here, what I'm going to do, I'll read Darkworld another time for you all. In the meantime, I'm going to read to you another story of mine called From Russia with... Oops. It's a little play on the James Bond title From Russia with Love. So I'll read that in a little bit for you. But first, I'm going to read some fairy tales. And we're going to get started now. So, here we are. Where we left off. We left off at a story, and this is my bookmark, a story called The Pike with the Long Teeth. And there is an image, and I will show it to you. It's at the end of the story, but I don't think that will harm anything for you to see it. There we are, The Pike with the Long Teeth. Yes, there are illustrations in this book, a few. So here we are, The Pike with the Long Teeth. The night before St. John's, a pike was born in the Shexna River, a pike with teeth so long that God preserve us from any such. Shad, perch, flounder, all assembled to stare and marvel at this wonder. At the time of the birth, the water in the Shexna became agitated. A ferry boat sailing across it almost sank, and some lovely maidens who were taking a walk on the riverbank scattered. Such a long-toothed pike he was, and he began to grow not by the day, but by the hour. With every day that passed, an inch was added to his size, and the pike with the long teeth began to roam about the Shexna, catching shad and perch. He would sight a shad from afar, snatch him with his teeth, and the shad was as good as gone. Only his bones crackled between the pike's long teeth. Such was the marvelous happening in the Shexna. Now, what could the shad and perch do? They were very sad. If things went on like this, the pike would eat them all, wipe them out. So all the small fry gathered together and debated about how to get rid of that ravenous pike with the long teeth. To the meeting also came Perchsin, who held forth in a loud voice, "Stop pondering, racking your wits, and cudgelling your brains. Listen to what I have to say. All of us in this Shexna are now sorely tired. The pike with the long teeth gives us no rest. He gobbles up all kinds of fish. There's no life for any of us anymore in the Shexna. Let us move to smaller rivers, to the Sisma, the Konoma, and the Slavenka. There no one will bother us, and we'll live happily and beget children." So all the shad, flounder, and perch left the Shexna for the smaller rivers, for the Sisma, the Konoma, and the Slavenka. On the way, as they swam, a cunning fisherman caught many of them in his line. He cooked a savory fish soup, and, it appears, ate it on a fast day. From that time on, almost no small fry has been found in the Shexna. A fisherman can cast his line into the water and pull out nothing. Once in a while, he gets a little sterlet, but nothing else. And that is the whole story of the ravenous pike with the long teeth. That rascal caused a lot of trouble in the Shexna, but later he came to a bad end himself. When there was no small fry left, he went after worms and got caught on a hook. The fisherman made a fish soup out of him, ate it, and praised it highly, for the flesh of the pike was quite succulent. It was there, I was there, and ate the soup with him. It ran down my mustache, but never got into my mouth. There's that stupid end again. All right, sorry, I just recognized that ending. Because it's happened before. I'm not sure if you, dear listeners, recognize it, if you were here last week and remember it, but there have been a number of stories that ended like that. I wonder if that's someone who actually told those tales and they just decided to say, I was there, and the soup ran down my mouth and down my mustache, but none got in my mouth. Well, regardless, let us move on to the next story. This one's called The Bad Wife. Uh-oh. We know it happens to wives in Russian fairy tales. Dear listeners slash readers, if you've been keeping up with these Russian fairy tales since last weekend, you know it happens to bad wives in Russian fairy tales. Regardless, let us press on. There was once a bad wife who made life impossible for her husband and disobeyed him in everything. Uh-oh, bad wife. If he told her to rise early, she slept for 3 days. If he told her to sleep, she did not sleep at all. If her husband asked her to make pancakes, she said, "You don't deserve pancakes, you scoundrel." If her husband said, "Don't make pancakes, wife, since I don't deserve them," she made an enormous panful, 2 whole gallons of pancakes, and said, "Now eat, scoundrel, and be sure that all of them are eaten." If he said, "Wife, do not wash the clothes, nor go out to cut hay. It is too much work for you," she answered, "No, you scoundrel, I will go, and you shall come with me." Maybe she's not such a bad wife at all. Moving on. One day, after a quarrel with her, he went in distress to the woods to pick berries, found a currant bush, and saw a bottomless pit in the middle of it. As he looked at it, oh gosh, he thought to himself, "Why do I go on living with a bad wife and struggling with her? Could I not put her in that pit and teach her a lesson?" He went back home and said, "Wife, do not go to the woods for berries." "I shall go, you fool. I found a currant bush. Don't pick it. I shall go pick it clean. And what is more, I won't give you any currants." I told you. I told you where this was going. That fool doesn't see what an amazing wife he has. She goes and does the opposite of what he says. I mean, come on. It's not a good marriage for any stretch of the imagination, but if she really just does the opposite of what you say every time you say, it's not a bad deal. All right, let's keep going. The husband went home happily and lived there in peace for 3 days. On the 4th day, he went to see how his wife was getting along. He took a long tow rope, let it down into the pit, and dragged out a little imp. He was frightened and was about to drop him back into the pit when the imp began to shriek and then said imploringly, "Peasant, do not put me back. Let me out into the world. A bad wife has come into our pit. She torments, bites, and pinches all of us. We are sick to death of her. If you let me out, I will do you a good turn." So the peasant let him go free in Holy Russia. Holy Russia, that's okay. The imp said, "Well, peasant, let us go to the town of Vologda. I will make people sick, and you shall cure them." Yes, that's a interesting favor, Mr. Imp. Now the imp set to work on merchants' wives and daughters. He set to work on merchants' wives and daughters, did he? He would enter into them, and they would go mad and fall ill. Oh my, this story took a turn. Our peasant would go to the house of the sick woman. The imp would leave. A blessing would come on the house. Everyone thought that the peasant was a doctor, gave him money, and fed him pies. This is wonderful. The peasant thus amassed an uncountable sum of money. Then the imp said to him, "You now have plenty, peasant. Are you satisfied? Next I shall enter a boyar's daughter, and mind you, do not come to cure her, else I shall eat you." The boyar sent for the peasant, the famous doctor. He came to the boyar's beautiful house and told him to have all the townspeople and all the carriages and coachmen gather in the street in front of the house. He gave orders that all the coachmen should crack their whips and cry aloud, "The bad wife has come, the bad wife has come." Then he went into the sick maiden's room. When he came in, the imp was enraged at him and said, "Why have you come here, Russian man? Now I will eat you." He said, "What do you mean? I have not come to drive you out, but to warn you that the bad wife is here." The imp jumped on the windowsill, stared fixedly, and listened intently. He heard all the crowd in the street cry at one voice, "The bad wife has come. "Peasant," said the imp, "where shall I hide?" "Return to the pit. She won't go there again." The imp went there and joined the bad wife. The boyar rewarded the peasant by giving him half his possessions and his daughter in marriage. But the bad wife, to this day, sits in the pit in nether darkness. Well, that was interesting. I still don't see a moral to the story. Yeah, it's kind of weird, kind of a weird one. Funny moments, but only because they were worded in such a way the imp entered many merchants' wives and daughters, after all. Ooh, how naughty. Moving on. Let's read one or two. We'll read one more, then I'll move on to an original story. This one's called The Miser. There was once a wealthy merchant named Marker, and never was anyone so stingy as he. One day he went for a walk. On his walk he saw an old beggar asking for alms. "For Christ's sake, pious men, give me something," Marker the wealthy passed him by. But a poor... Oh, yes, thank you for liking the video, Megan. Where was I? Yes. The poor peasant who followed him felt pity for the beggar and gave him a kopeck. The rich man felt ashamed, stopped and said to the peasant, "Listen, fellow countryman, lend me a kopeck. I want to give something to the beggar, but I have no small coins." The peasant gave him a kopeck and asked, "When shall I come to collect my loan?" "Come tomorrow." The next day the poor man went to the rich man for his kopeck. He entered the broad courtyard. "Is Marker the wealthy home?" "He is. What do you want?" asked Marker. "I have come for my kopeck." "Ah, brother, come some other time. I have no small coins now." The poor man bowed low and said, "I will come tomorrow." The following day he came again and was told, "I have no small coins, but if you have change for 100 rubles, I can get your kopeck. If not, come in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, the poor man again went to the rich man. When Mark the Wealthy saw him through the window, he said to his wife, "Listen, wife, I will undress completely and lie under the icons, and you cover me with the shroud and sit down and lament me as though I were dead. When the peasant comes for his loan, tell him that I died today." The wife said, and "Hello, Mum, I see you have joined as well." The wife did as her husband ordered her. She sat down and shed burning tears. The peasant came into the room, and she asked, "What is it?" "I have come to collect my loan from Mark the Wealthy," answered the poor man. "Ah, little peasant, Mark the Wealthy wished you a long life. He has just died." "May he go to the kingdom of heaven. Permit me, hostess, to do something for him for my kopeck. At least I can wash his sinful body." Saying this, he snatched a kettle of boiling water and poured it over Marker the Wealthy. Marker could barely stand it. He gritted his teeth and jerked his feet. "I don't care whether you jerk. Give me back my kopeck," said the poor man. He washed the body and prepared it for burial. "Now, hostess, buy a coffin and have it taken to the church. I will read the Psalter over him." Marker the Wealthy was put in a coffin and taken to the church, and the peasant began to read the Psalter over him. My, oh my, I mean, he just basically boiled this man alive, and the man held still. Well, his feet jerked a bit, but still. Dark night came. Suddenly, a window opened, and thieves broke into the church. The peasant hid behind the altar. The thieves began to share the spoils among them. They shared everything. Only a golden saber remained, and each one wanted it for himself and refused to yield it to the others. The poor man suddenly jumped out and cried, "Why do you quarrel? Whoever cuts off the dead man's head shall have the saber." At this, Mark of the Wealthy jumped up, beside himself with fear. The thieves were frightened, threw away their money, and took to their heels. "Now, little peasant," said Marker, "let us share the money." They shared it evenly. Both of them got a great deal. "And how about my kopeck?" said the poor man. "Eh, brother, you can see for yourself. I have no small coins." And so Mark of the Wealthy never returned the kopeck. What in the bloody hell was that? I don't... Oh, good God. What kind of story was that? I mean, we all know rich people are cheap and that they don't want to share any of the money with anybody, but really, come on. You don't want to share your money, so you pretend you're dead. You get covered in boiling water, and you let them put you in a coffin and take you to a church where you're going to be buried, and then you let people try to rob you. No, not try, they successfully robbed you. And they were quarreling over one piece they couldn't split evenly. And you don't sit up until they're going to cut off your head, and whoever does it first gets the money, and you scare them off. Great, wonderful. And then the person who you wouldn't give the one kopeck, which we all know, I'm sure, from the story, is not worth much. You wouldn't give him one kopeck. And then you end up splitting your fortune with him because why? I just don't understand. I really don't understand. Oh, good God. All right. Well, we're going to stop there for a moment and move on to one of my originals, and then we'll come back to some more Russian fairy tales. I'm sure a few of you are watching. Later on, I am going to post a link to my YouTube. That way, if you subscribe there, you can also watch from there. But in the meantime, here, allow me to pull up one of my stories. I mentioned the one I would read was called From Russia with Oops. So this story is, it's kind of fun. Yes, I enjoy it. It's well, I was about to tell you what it's about, but I'll just read it for you. It was an idea I had for a rock opera, as it were. I thought it would be a lot of fun to put it to music and to flesh it out, but I never got very far with it. So anyway, let us move forth. I will read it. From Russia with Oops by Brett Picorni. Dave Allen was an older man. He didn't like technology, so he never kept up with it. He didn't even like to think about the fact that his son owned one of those robot-killing machines that was so properly named after the fruit that allegedly doomed Adam. In case you're wondering, that's an apple. They doomed man to mortality, and one of these days they would inevitably doom man to extinction. The only good thing to come out of a computer, as far as Mr. Allen was concerned, was online shopping. Mr. Allen owned an extensive collection of records. When I say extensive, I mean abnormally large. When I say abnormally large, I mean a record store, yes, they do still exist, would be envious of his collection. And when I say a record store, yes, they do still exist, would be envious of his collection, I mean, holy cat jugglers Batman, I bet he has every one ever made. Ever. The only problem was that Mr. Allen didn't have every record ever made. Yes, he had a lot. Again, this is an understatement, but he was still missing just one album. Otis Redding's Who Left the Water Running. Granted, this is quite possibly the rarest IP on the face of the planet. LP, not IP, the rarest LP on the face of the planet. It would only make sense that he's been trying to find a copy since the day it first came out. One day, Mr. Allen's 14-year-old son, Alex, was online, and he happened to come across said album from a seller located in Russia. This came about when Alex's search for underwater porn resulted in such a find. "Hey, Dad!" Mr. Allen was overjoyed. This would be the best pension he ever spent. He wasted no time in confiscating his son's computer so that he might make said purchase, and just as soon as he had swept it from the desk, he relinquished it, for he did not know, nor did he care to know, how it worked. "Son, I hope you never have to hear me say this again, but push that button." 2 days later, the box arrived. It was a large wooden crate, about 7 feet tall and 3 feet by 3 feet wide, with "This side up" printed near the top. Obviously, they had taken every precaution to make sure that this particular record made it safely to its destination. Needless to say, Mr. Allen could not wait to open his crate and mount that vinyl on his wall. It was then that Mr. Allen heard a faint whimper coming from the box. He pointed to his son and snapped his fingers. "Alex, get the crowbar from the garage." After prying the horizontal boards from the top of the crate, Mr. Allen started pulling at the vertical ones with his hands. The crate was stuffed with what appeared to be newsprint shreds with Russian print on them. He grasped handful after handful of this newsprint and tossed it aside. He began to reveal the true contents of his package. All the newsprint tossed aside, and one side of the crate thoroughly pulled apart. All that was left in the crate was a tall, slender, black-haired woman with a note in the hand of her outreaching arm. It read as follows: Thank you for ordering Russian Bride. Your Russian Bride is completely subservient and come with 1 year warranty. Russian Bride speak little English, but make up for this in her abilities to cook, clean, and distill vodka. If you find Russian Bride is not too satisfactory, please return her for full refund. Refund subject to large restocking fee. Mr. Allen took long alternating looks from note to Russian Bride. Son, exactly what button did you push? Do. It was a good thing that Mrs. Allen was off on a weekend at the spa. She was the jealous type and would not have understood the circumstances, not to say Mr. Allen understood them himself. Whatever the case, Mr. Allen decided to pack the Russian bride up that night so that he might send her back to Russia the following morning. The following conversation took place in the box while Mr. Allen was asleep. What is your name? Natasha. I'm Alex. I don't care. You're very beautiful. And you are a child. What does age have to do with anything? You sold yourself, remember? I was sold by family to feed little ones. So you have kids. You have your own family back home? Back home already? No, not children. I am eldest daughter. My father refuses to let me get involved with men unless through mail order service. What if I ordered you? You did. Your father is now sending back. Like I said, you are a child. I love you, Natasha. I knew it as soon as I saw you out from under those shreds of newspaper. I have never known love, and neither have you. You see pretty face, you feel tingle in pants. You think love. You are not the man. You do not know love. I didn't see an ad for you and get horny. I didn't order you, Natasha. Your being here is a mistake. I'll be a man. One day. It was Monday morning. Mrs. Allen would be getting back later in that afternoon. Alex had already left for school, and Mr. Allen had overslept. Luckily, he did not have work that day, but he really wanted to be awake to see his son off to school and the box off the doorstep. Either way, the box was gone, and Mr. Allen would soon be getting his pension back, minus restocking fee. Mrs. Allen got home at about 3. She came home to a surprise, that being a moderately clean home. She could tell that Mr. Allen had vacuumed because the pattern left on the carpet was not in straight lines. Quite to the contrary, it was done with random pushes of the machine all around the room. She could tell he washed the windows because the streaks that had been left by the window cleaner were left in circular wipes, as opposed to the ones left by her. The ones left her by her regularly straight motion. She could tell that something was fishy. Not a pizza box in sight, not a beer can around, not a sock on the floor. She went into the bedroom to find Mr. Allen sprawled on the bed, wearing Rolling Stones boxers, a single rubber glove, and one of those masks that doctors wear that are pretty much only good for keeping blood or sawdust from getting into your mouth. Real sexy, Dave, Mrs. Allen said to herself. She laid down next to her husband on the bed, popping her head on her right hand. Mr. Allen was fast asleep, even though it was only 3:30. She looked at him for a moment longer before sliding her arm under the pillow and laying her head on top of it. She whispered to him, "Are you going to pick up Alex, or should I? Isn't he going to ride the bus home?" "No, not today. It's baseball tryouts, remember? Come on, let's get up. Help me unpack, then we can head out to the field and watch from the fence." "Bags? It was a weekend trip. I thought you just brought an overnight bag." "I did, but they had a lot of stuff to give us when we left. It was really nice." When they got to the school's baseball diamond, they looked for Alex. They didn't see him at first glance, but decided to hang around in case he was in the bathroom or in the locker room. When they still didn't see him after a while, they decided to talk to one of the coaches. "Excuse me, coach, have you seen Alex Allen?" "Who?" "Alex Allen. He should be here. He's been talking about these tryouts for weeks." "I haven't seen any Alex Allen. I'll let you know if I hear anything, though. Maybe you should try building B, room 15. He might be in there clearing up some homework with one of the assistant coaches if he's new. Clearing up some paperwork, that is." "Thanks, coach." Needless to say, they could not find Alex anywhere. He was not in Building B, Building C, or even Building F, for that matter. Yes, it was a big high school. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he took the bus home, Mr. Allen said hopefully. When they got home, they did not see Alex in the living room. They did not see him in the kitchen. They did not see him in the bathroom, or at least they didn't see the bathroom door shut. The last place he would be, oddly enough, was his room, and that was the last place they checked. They did not find Alex in his room. They did, however, find a note on his pillow. It read as follows: Dear Dad, Natasha is unlike anyone I have ever met. I have not known her long, but I can't just leave her here and never see her again. I went with her while you were asleep, and I don't know when or if I'll be back. Tell Mom I said hi when she gets back. Who the hell is Natasha? Beats me. You didn't see him off to the bus stop? I slept through it. I don't know how. But you must have some idea who this Natasha is, Dave. He said he met her recently in the letter. Oh, God. Mr. Allen had a hard time doing so, but he told his wife all about the Russian mail-order bride and how he had packed her up to be sent off this morning. Not only had he slept through Alex's leaving for school, but he had also slept through the shipping off of his cargo. Needless to say, he was off to the airport within the hour. All he packed was his passport, $200, a credit card for the airport, and some extra clothes in case he ended up staying longer than expected. He didn't need a translation dictionary, for he spoke fluent Russian. He would not, however, tell anyone why he spoke fluent Russian. If he did, he would have to kill them, or so he said. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Allen didn't like technology, so he was very cautious on the plane. He moved very slow. He very gently put his bag in the overhead, and he sat in the aisle so he wouldn't have to see exactly how high he would be plummeting from when the steel bird failed mid-flight. The takeoff was smooth, and the captain's voice was reassuring. All was well until about halfway through the flight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your co-pilot speaking. The captain has had one too many and is currently incapacitated. Please remain calm. I am more than capable of piloting this aircraft. This message concerned Mr. Allen. Yes, the man sitting next to him claimed to be a frequent flyer of this airline, and yes, he claimed that this pilot liked to scare his passengers, but Mr. Allen wasn't buying it. He could not believe everything was all right until the plane was safely on the ground. Even then, he thought that his being alive was a miracle. When he left the airport, he found what looked like the remnants of a vehicle that just so happened to have a taxi sign slapped on the top. He didn't see anything that looked any better nearby, so he fared the cab. For all intents and purposes, all of the conversations to follow are being translated to their literal English versions. Oh, that hit the spot. Where to, pal? Wherever this address is, Mr. Allen said while holding up a scribbled note. Perhaps you should go back to the airport. That is quite a drive. What's the matter? Don't think this piece of junk will hold up? Hey, in Soviet Russia, we didn't even have cabs. Hell, we didn't have cars. That's not how the joke goes. What joke? In Soviet Russia, you don't have cab have you. 6 minutes of silence and staring. Oh, that's a good one, pal. How did you come up with that? What, you've never heard? Never mind. Just get me there, please. I can pay. When they reached the address, Mr. Allen paid for his fare and got out. Two hours later, and the cab driver was still laughing about the in Soviet Russia joke. Mr. Allen walked to the front of the door of what appeared to be a bar and decided to knock. The door swung open, and a very large, grizzly-bearded man with a gigantic smile stood in its place. Are you here for bride? Mr. Allen walked in without a word. He was in the right place. Alex? Who is Alex? My son. I'm the one who sent the Russian mail order bride back and walked to America, but he never listened to it either. I hear it is very valuable, though. I would give you anything for that record. I am sorry, but it is not for sale. Now, what were you saying about your son? What son? Your son. I think you said his name is Alex. Who? Your son, Alex. Right. I sent back a mail order bride, and he was in the box with her for some reason. Have you seen him? That little bastard. He took my Natasha and left for God knows where. I just know that she said he loved her, this child. Said he would be a man someday, and she said then love him, and she could then love him. I say, why would you want someone who is not a man now, but still she run off with him? Do you know where? Do you know where to? If I knew, you do not think I would have followed or kept them from going? No, they probably left the country. I know people. They would not be gone for long if they were still in Russia. Well, when did they leave? No, they probably left the country. Oh, sorry. Let me start that paragraph over. It was from the big man. If I knew, do you know, I would have followed or kept them going from going. No, they probably left the country. I know people. They would not be gone for long if they were still in Russia. Well, when did they leave? They left about an hour ago. Speaking of which, how did your package get back so fast, and how did you manage to get here so soon after? I don't have time to explain. I have to go to the airport and find them. How do you know they'll be there? My son doesn't have a passport. They'll be there. Before you go, if you bring Natasha back to me, I might consider letting you have Otis Redding. Mr. Allen found another cab and had a surprisingly similar conversation to the first. When he got out of the cab, the other driver was also laughing hysterically about the in Soviet Russia joke. Apparently, nobody in Russia had ever heard these jokes. For now, though, he would not worry about humoring anyone else. He had to find his son, and most importantly, he had to find Natasha. The airport was not large. Mr. Allen noticed this more so when he approached it than when he had left. It would still take some effort, though, to find his son. Granted, it was not very crowded, but it was crowded enough. There were 4 gates, and each one had people entering and leaving. Each of them had people waiting for luggage and checking said luggage. People were even sleeping while they waited for the flights. Mr. Allen noticed that one flight happened to be boarding at gate 3. His son could not get a ticket, but he might try to sneak onto a flight, and he remembered Natasha's face. As he made his way to the gate from the airport entrance, he began to scan the small crowds for him. There were families, friends, and drifters alike, and all of them looked shady. This might be harder than he thought. Mr. Allen noticed himself thinking that he had never been to this part of Russia about anything except. He thought about his last. Mr. Allen noticed himself thinking about things other than his search. He thought about his last trip to Russia, about the fact that he had never been to this part of Russia, and about anything except for what was currently going on. It was not until he noticed himself inadvertently stop and look in a certain direction that he remembered why he was walking in this airport in the first place. It was then that he actually saw exactly what he was looking at. Alex was boarding the flight to Ireland with Natasha. Without pause, Mr. Allen approached the gate. "Excuse me, but I have to get on this flight." "Do you have tickets, sir?" "No, but I have to get on there." "I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot board this flight without paying." "I have money in my wallet. How much will it cost?" "You don't have enough. If you want a ticket for the next flight, please go to the front desk." As Mr. Allen didn't want to get arrested in Russia, he made his way to the front desk and simply watched the plane take off. The only other thing to catch his attention at that moment was an announcement on the news. A new joke has become viral in Sudzensk and is quickly spreading throughout the nation. A joke which starts, "In Soviet Russia," is believed to have been started by an unknown tourist. More on this at 11. Well, that was fast. And that, dear readers/listeners, that, my friends, is the end of that story. I hope you enjoyed it. So basically, the story is about this man trying to find his son somewhere in Russia and then having to go around the world, basically, chasing after his son and this foreign exchange bride. This Russian mail order bride. So, yes, it's supposed to be sort of a fun, quirky story. And I actually have some songs that I created for it. I won't drop into song and dance for you now, but yes, I thought you might enjoy that, so I figured I'd share it. Anyway, let us move onward and upward and forward in whichever direction we can by going to the Russian Fairy Tales book and reading another few stories out of this. God help us. So here we are. Russian Fairy Tales. Yay. I hope you enjoyed that story of mine, by the way. If you did, please comment. So let me know. And don't forget as well to follow and subscribe on my YouTube page. If you do, I would be ever so grateful. And you would then be able to follow there as well. You would get notifications every time I go live. So let us continue with the next story, The Nobleman and the Peasant. One day, a nobleman went to market and bought a canary for 50 rubles. How interesting. A peasant happened to see this, and when he came home, he told his wife, "Imagine, today I was at the market, and I saw the baron buying a small bird for 50 rubles. I will take my gander to him. Perhaps he will buy that. Take it. The peasant brought his gander to the nobleman. "Baron, buy this gander." "How much is it?" asked the nobleman. 100 rubles. "You idiot. Since you are willing to pay 50 rubles for a small bird, 100 is cheap for this one." The nobleman flew into a rage, beat the peasant, and took his gander for nothing. "Very well," said the peasant. "You will remember this gander." Oh, that is a very foreboding statement if I ever heard one. Oh, good Lord, that water's delicious. He returned home, disguised himself as a mason, took a saw and axe, and went by the nobleman's house, crying, "Who wants a warm vestibule built?" The nobleman heard him, called him in, and asked, "How will you do it?" "It's very simple. Near here are warm trees. A vestibule built of those warm trees does not have to be heated in winter." "Ah, brother," said the nobleman, "show me those trees at once." "With pleasure." Both of them went to the woods. They were stupid back then, weren't they? Both of them went to the woods. There the peasant cut an enormous pine tree and began to slice it into two halves. He cut the tree lengthwise and began to drive in a wedge. The nobleman watched him for a while, then foolishly thrust his hand into the cut. No sooner had he done this than the peasant pulled out the wedge, and the nobleman's hand was firmly caught. Then the peasant took a leather strap and began to thrash the nobleman, repeating, "Don't beat a peasant, don't take his gander! Don't beat a peasant, don't take his gander!" He thrashed to his heart's delight and said, "Well, Baron, I have beaten you once, and I will beat you again unless you return my gander and add 100 rubles into the bargain." Having said this, he left, and the nobleman stayed in the woods till nightfall. In the end, his family became worried, but much time went by before they found him and freed him from the vice. The nobleman fell ill. He lay on his bed and moaned. The peasant picked herbs and flowers, stuck them all over himself, disguised himself as a doctor, and once again went near the nobleman's courtyard, crying, "Does someone need curing?" The nobleman heard him, called him in, and said, "Who are you?" "I am a doctor. I can cure every illness." "Ah, brother, please cure me." "Certainly. Have a bath heated." Straightway a bath was heated. "Now come to be cured," said the peasant to the nobleman. Only don't take anyone with us to the bathroom. Watch out for the evil eye." They went to the bathroom, and the nobleman undressed. "Well, sir," asked the doctor, can you bear it if in this heat I apply ointment to you?" "No, I can't," said the nobleman. "What shall we do then? Do you want to be tied?" "Please tie me." "Oh, you stupid nobleman." The peasant tied him with a rope, took a whip, and began to drub and pommel him, repeating, "Don't beat a peasant, don't take his gander. Don't beat a peasant, don't take his gander." When he was about to leave, he said, "Now, Baron, I have beaten you twice. I shall beat you a third time unless you return the gander and 200 rubles into the bargain." The nobleman got out of his bath, more dead than alive, decided not to wait for a third time, and sent the peasant the gander and 200 rubles. Well, damn. Guy got what he deserved, didn't he? And the peasant, well, what a brutal man. Oh, and thank you, Joy. I'm glad you were giggling through most of the story. Perhaps I will write more. Just for you, just for that comment. That is the end of that story, by the way. Just for that comment, I will sing to you one small bit from the story from Russia with Oops, and that is part of the story where the boy is in the box with the Russian woman while they're on the flight back. And that's when he's describing to her about how he loves her and this and that, and she's like, "Please, you are not a man, you are a child." It'll move into song or whatever, and it's something along the lines of, "I'll be a man someday, I will be." Something like that. Along those lines, yes? Anyway, let us move on to the next story. I don't know why I moved to this accent, perhaps because I was feeling in the moment that I should talk like this. Anyway, we move on to a new story called The Goat Comes Back. Oh, I see someone else is going to be live soon, but that's okay. I'm live right now, so I'm paying attention to me. Anyway, this one's called The Goat Comes Back. The goat comes back, and there is a picture. Here is a picture of the goat that apparently comes back. All right. Billy Goat, where have you been? I was grazing horses. And where are the horses? Nicola led them away. And where is Nicola? He went to the larder. And where is the larder? It was flooded with water. And where is the water? The oxen drank it. And where are the oxen? They went to the mountain. And where is the mountain? The worms gnawed it away. And where are the worms? The geese ate them all. And where are the geese? They went to the junipers. And where are the junipers? The maids broke them. And where are the maids? They all got married. And where are their husbands? They all died. That. Fuck. All right. Let's move on. Let's read another one. And I'll probably call it with this one. This one's called Ivanushko the Little Fool. And let's see, how long is this one? Oh, yes, this is a good length one, a good one on which to end. Yes, Ivanushko, or Ivanushko, the Little Fool. Once upon a time there lived an old man and his old wife. Oh, we're back to the old man and his old wife scheme. All right. They had 3 sons. Oh, 3 sons again. That's not common for Russian fairy tales. Right. 3 sons, 2 older sons. The 2 older ones were clever, but the third was called Ivanushko the Little Fool. Oh, we're doing this again. All right. The clever brothers grazed sheep in the field, but the fool did nothing at all. The whole day long he sat on the stove, catching flies. Oh my, this may be the story. All right. Perking up now. One day the old woman prepared some rye dumplings and said to the fool, "Here are some dumplings. Take them to your brothers for their dinner." She filled a pot with the dumplings, and he took it and lumbered off to find his brothers. It was a sunny day. When Ivanushko came out on the road, he saw his shadow at his side and thought, "Who is this man? He walks by my side and does not leave me for an instant. Surely he wants some dumplings." He began to throw dumplings at his shadow, and one after another threw them all away, but the shadow still kept walking at his side. "What an insatiable glutton," said the fool angrily, and hurled his pot at the shadow, and the shreds flew in all directions. And the shards flew in all directions. He came empty-handed to his brothers. They asked him, "Why have you come here, fool?" "I have brought you dinner." "Where is it? Give it to us at once." "Well, you see, brothers, a stranger followed me all the way here, and he ate it all up." "What stranger?" "Here he is. Even now he is standing by my side." The brothers began to swear at him and thrash him. Having thrashed him, they told him to tend the sheep, and themselves went home to have the dinner in the village. All right, maybe this isn't the one I was thinking of. Regardless, let us continue on. The little fool set about tending the sheep. Seeing that they scattered all over the field, he decided to gather them together and tear out their eyes. What? Why? He herded them in a little spot, plucked out the eyes of every one of them, made them huddle together in a heap, and sat there as happy as a lark. He thought that he had done something worthwhile. The brothers ate their dinner and returned to the field. "You fool, what kind of mess have you made here? Why is the flock blinded?" "What do they need eyes for, brothers? When you went away, they were scattered everywhere, so I thought it would be a good idea to catch them, gather them together, and pluck out their eyes. It was a lot of work, and it made me quite tired." "Just wait, we'll show you what it means to be tired," said the brothers, and began to belabor him with their fists. The fool was well rewarded for his trouble. Some time passed, not much, not little. One day the old parents sent Ivanushko the little fool to town to buy provisions for the holidays. Why? Why would they send Ivanushko? Oh, Ivanushko bought many things, a table and spoons and cups and salt. He loaded a whole cart with objects of every description. He started to drive home, but his horse, it seems, was not quite strong enough for this heavy load and walked rather slowly. Ivanushka thought to himself, "After all, the table has 4 legs, just like the horse. Why shouldn't it run home by itself?" So he put the table out on the road. He drove on a long distance for a short distance, and the raven circled over him, cawing and cawing. The little sisters must be hungry, else why would they cry like that, thought the fool, and put out dishes with victuals to treat the ravens. Eat, little sisters, you're welcome, he said, and he rattled on slowly. Ivanushka drove through a wood of young trees. Along the road was a row of burned-down trunks. Ah, he thought, the poor boys have no caps. They'll catch a cold that way. So he put his earthen pots and crocks on them. Then Ivanushka came to the river. He set about watering his horse, but it refused to drink. Probably doesn't want water without salt, he thought, and began to salt the river. He poured out a whole bag of salt, and the horse still refused to drink. Why don't you drink, you old carcass? Have I poured out a whole bag of salt for nothing? He said, and he struck the horse with a log right on its head and killed it on the spot. You little bastard! Now all Ivanushka had left was a bag of spoons, which he slung over his shoulder. He walked, and the spoons behind him kept rattling. Tra-ta-ta-tum, tra-ta-ta-tum, tra-ta-ta-tum. He thought that the spoons were saying, Ivanushka is a fool, so he threw them down and trampled upon them, repeating, That'll teach you to call me a fool. Don't you dare taunt me, you wicked things. He returned home and said, I bought everything we need, little brothers. Thanks, little fool, but where are your purchases? The table is coming, but apparently it is late. Our little sisters, the ravens, are eating from the dishes. The pots and crocks I put on the boys' heads in the woods. I used the salt to season the horse's water, and the spoons taunted me, so I dropped them on my way. Hurry, fool, go gather everything you have scattered on the road. Ivanushka went to... Why would you send him? You saw what he did the first time and all the times before. Who's the fool for real here? Ivanushka went to the woods, removed the pots from the burned trunks, knocked out their bottoms, and strung a dozen of them, small and big, on a rope. When he brought them home, his brothers thrashed him, went to town themselves to make their purchases, and left him at home. He listened and heard the beer in the tub brewing and brewing. Okay. Beer, stop brewing, don't tease the fool, said Ivanushka, but the beer did not heat him, so he let it all out of the tub, sat in the trough, and drove around the room singing little songs to himself. What? Can't you see that your brother is trouble? When the brothers returned, they were terribly angry. They seized Ivanushka, sewed him up in a sack, and dragged him to the river. They set the sack down on the shore and went to find a hole in the ice. Just then a nobleman happened to drive by in a carriage drawn by 3 grey horses, and Ivanushka began to shout, I've been appointed governor to rule and to judge, but I know neither how to rule nor how to judge. Wait, you fool, said the nobleman. I know how to rule and how to judge. Creep out of that sack. Ivanushka crept out, sewed up the nobleman, sat in his carriage, and drove out of sight. The brothers came, dropped the sack under the ice, and the water made a sound like grey, grey, grey. Wait, what? I'm going to start that paragraph again. When the brothers returned, they were terribly angry. They seized Ivanushka, sewed him up in a sack, and dragged him to the river. They set the sack down on the shore and went to find a hole in the ice. And that's when the nobleman drove up in the carriage. And Ivanushka somehow managed to trick him into getting into that sack. Okay. The brothers came, dropped the sack under the ice, and the water made a sound like grey, grey, grey. He must be trying to catch a fish, said the brothers, and set out for home. As though from nowhere, Ivanushka appeared before them, driving a troika and bragging. See the horses I caught? There's still 1 grey horse left, a real jewel. The brothers became envious and said to the fool, Sew us up in the sack and drop us quickly into the hole. We'll get the grey. Ivanushka, the little fool, dropped them in the hole and drove home to drink beer to honor the memory of his dead brothers. Ivanushka had a well. In this well was a bell, and that's all I have to tell. What in the fuck was that story? Seriously? You have a fucking dumbass of a brother who's ruining the family financially and more. Yes, he's killing their crop. He's ruining them financially, quite literally throwing money away. And the brothers, I mean, granted, they're exasperated, but it's still not okay to kill your brother. He's mentally challenged, that one. But they send him on all these tasks. Why? Why would you do it? Just let him be. Let him exist, and that's it. Oh, gosh. And then they get tricked by him. How? And then he kills his brothers. Granted, they tried to kill him first, but he's an idiot. And that nobleman. Is everyone in these stories so dumb? Gods. I don't know what to say. Well, thanks for watching. That's the end of that with the fairy tales for the evening and with my story as well. For those of you who are here, I'm glad you are here and I'm glad you joined. And I guess for now, I will bid you adieu, dear readers / listeners. Tomorrow we will brace yourself. We will read more Russian fairy tales and I will read another one of my own tales. And then Monday we will resume with what's it called? With Harry Potter. We'll resume Harry Potter on Monday, finish it Tuesday, and start something else on Wednesday. All right, I'm going to finish this now. It's delightful, but I'm done sipping it. Prost! Salute! And you all have yourselves a wonderful evening. Once again, adieu, adieu, adieu.